All right, cool. All right, so thank you for doing this with me, Tomha. Okay.
You're more than welcome.
Okay,
It's
so
definitely my pleasure.
all right. So this is going to be really good for me because you have a totally different background from me. So it's going to force me to explain this stuff in a way that's accessible. Okay. So the first thing I want to explain is something that mathematicians, there's like a really interesting analogy between the cyclical way in which our emotions interact with each other and just basically the motion of oscillations that mathematicians have been describing for ages. So I'm going to start by, I don't know if what was your math background like? Like, did you ever cover complex numbers in school?
I think, yes.
Yeah,
And I think
imaginary
in
numbers,
college,
like imaginary numbers
yes.
squared of -1 is I. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was always really confused about imaginary numbers. I like, what is their purpose? But I really, as from what I've understand, their purpose is actually a really powerful way to describe the movement of things that are oscillating. Because the way that you should think about imaginary numbers, and nobody told me this, I don't know why, you should think of the imaginary numbers as potential energy, right? They have they're like the energy that can power an oscillatory motion. That's what imaginary numbers are actually used to represent when we describe like oscillations in terms of what are called complex numbers are basically a mixture of like real numbers and imaginary numbers. Sorry, my parents are around. What's up? This is going to come in and go out. All right. So I'm going to explain something. Okay. So I'm going to draw some axes over here. Let me do the templates. Let me see if I can get a grid. Oh, perfect. All right. Okay. So I'm going to have one axis. It goes like this. And this is the real, that is the demonstrated. Yeah, I'm just going to call this real love. All right, that is demonstrated love. That's the love that you actually show. And so this is the origin. This is 0. So everything over here is like. So and if you have any points that are over here, so basically I'm drawing an X and Y axis. Okay, so in this direction is like positive demonstrated love, demonstrated love, like you do loving things for people. And this way is like negative demonstrated love. Okay, and then on the Y axis, this is the so-called imaginary axis. This is positive love potential. This is like love potential, okay? Love potential.
Okay.
Okay, so this way is positive love potential. That means you have the urge to do nice, loving things, but you haven't done them yet. And this way is negative love potential. Negative love potential. That means you have the urge to hurt people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna talk about like oscillatory motion. All right, so let's say you start off with a ton of, so let's say moving in a circle. Yeah, let's say that we're moving between these 4 points. Okay, so let's say you start off with a ton of desire to demonstrate love, a ton of positive love potential, but you have not demonstrated any love yet. All right, so then when you're here, chances are you're going to demonstrate your love. So your love potential, your desire to demonstrate love is going to get converted into actual demonstrated love, and you're going to move like this. Okay, so your love potential is decreasing. Your desire to demonstrate love is decreasing as you're actually demonstrating love. Okay, so you move like this. Okay, and then what happens is that you've demonstrated so much love, and then you're out of the energy to keep demonstrating love. So you're like, okay, I'm out of energy. Now people let other people start doing stuff for me. And then sometimes you go through periods in life where you're like, I've demonstrated all this love, no one's demonstrating love to me. And then that's when you start building up resentment. Okay, so then you start going into this direction. You become less and less loving. So your actual demonstrated love gets less and less. And in the process, you're building up a negative love potential, that is resentment. Okay, so this is the motion of the oscillation. Okay. And then once you've built up a lot of resentment over you're like, I've demonstrated all this love, nobody's given it back to me, I have all this resentment. Then then this resentment will start getting demonstrated as negative love potential. Then like out of all that resentment, you're going to start hurting people. Okay, so you're gonna take that desire to hurt people, that negative love potential, and you're gonna actually start demonstrating it and making it real. And then you're gonna start doing hurtful and hateful things. And then you're gonna arrive over here where you've basically vented all your anger and you've done a lot of harm. You've demonstrated all that negative love. And then now you're like, okay, I don't have any more anger in me, but now I've demonstrated all this hate. What can happen now? Well, if people respond to your demonstration of anger with love, if they start feeding you love instead, now that you've gotten the anger out of your system, instead of punishing you, if they respond with love, then what's going to happen is that their positive love is going to offset, is going to make you kinder. So you're going to start being less and less negative. And the positive love that they give you, that's going to get stored up as love potential for you. All right. Because you're going to be like, oh, people are being so nice to me. Now I want to start demonstrating love. And then you'll store up love potential again and bring you back to equilibrium. Do you see this cycle that we as humans tend to go through? It's like we have a lot of love potential, we demonstrate it, and then we become confused why people haven't shown it back to us. So we build up resentment, and then we like take out our resentment. But then after we've taken out our resentment, if the love comes back to us, then we're like, oh, okay, I'm a loving person again. Okay. So this what I've described here is like a standard movement of an oscillation where the potential energy that's getting stored up is determining, it's helping to determine how the object is going to move, and it's going to keep the object moving in a circle. Okay, if you break the cycle, like if let's say somebody is angry and they vent all their anger and then nobody demonstrates love to them, then they're just going to get stuck here. They're just going to get stuck in like having demonstrated hate. And then especially if people punish them, then that's going to end up as more negative love potential. Okay. And that negative love potential is going to come out as hate. Okay. So when hurt people, as they say, right? Where's that? Hurt people. Anyway, the reason I said all this is that this oscillatory movement that I described with just metaphors, this is also described using complex numbers, right? You know, so like this love potential plane, this is the imaginary plane. And if we were to describe this motion of using oscillations, then up here, so this is the imaginary plane. So up here, this point would be a +1 on the imaginary axis and a 0 on the real axis. Anyway, there's like a lot of formal mathematical terminology, but basically, the point is that the part that you see, which is the demonstrated love, it's actually just like the shadow. Okay, so if you were to take a light over here and you were to shine it downward shining light, and then you took the shadow, imagine that there was a rod over here. So I'm just going to draw a rod that was moving in a circle. All right, so you have this rod that was moving in a circle. If you took a light and you shined it downwards, then the shadow of that circle on the what's called the real axis or the demonstrated axis, that's the only part that you see. But the truth is that the actual object is this full rod that's moving in a circle. And just because you only see a shadow of the rod, you only see the demonstrated love, that doesn't mean the love potential isn't there, right? So sometimes a person will be up here where the rod is pointed all the way up. They have a lot of love potential, but they haven't demonstrated it. And if all you see is the shadow from this light that's shining, then there'll be a complete 0 on the demonstrated love axis, but you don't see their potential. Okay, so this is and this is really how like real and imaginary numbers interact. It's like the real part is you take a light, you shine it on this object that's rotating inside and out of the real and imaginary plane. You shine it, and whatever shadow is on the real axis, that's the part that you see, but you don't see the whole picture. Okay. So, and the way that this would be described in oscillations is, you know, they would follow sine waves, right? Because, you know, mathematically you can derive it, you know, sine waves are all about the length of shadows and such, right? So this is the real love, real/demonstrated love. Okay. And then this is the love potential. Then for the real love, you're going to start, let's say you start up here. So you start at 0, then you're going to basically, we have like a sine wave oscillation. That's what the shadow is going to look like. It's going to follow a sine wave. right? So sine waves are very connected to movement in a circle, whereas the love potential, that's going to follow basically what's called the cosine wave, which is a sine wave that's been shifted a little. So this will kind of go down, and yeah, it's just I'm not very good at the drawing cosine waves clearly. Right? How does this go? I think I'm supposed to, yeah, something like this. Oof. Okay, whatever. I don't want to risk drawing a cosine wave and get all my offsets correctly. So this would be like cosine, sine wave. Anyway, so the point is that the way that these relationships and dynamics work with oscillations, there's already a ton of math to describe that. And I guess my hypothesis about reality is that everything, so this is a little bit inspired by string theory, but just disclaimer, I'm not a string theorist. I'm just like a data scientist. But in string theory, they say all of reality can be described by the motion of oscillating strings. And here I'm just using the word vibes as like a string that's like in many dimensions. And I don't know any string theory, but I think like all of reality can, if we go deep enough, be described as like these waves that are superimposed on each other. Anyway, that's kind of like a different section, but do you have any like feedback on or questions or something on like what I've
yes, I have like a million questions, a million things things I can ask you. So first I want to say this is very intuitive. As a clinical person, from the clinical standpoint, to me, there's so many qualitative values that I think it's hard to quantify, especially that starting point. Because based on experience, the way you express and share your love can be different too, based on the environment that you're in, like this, all those different factors. Right. And so I'm thinking about what would be a way to show that. And then
absolutely. No, this is brilliant. I have shown you oscillation only between two axes. That's just this love potential axis and demonstrated love. But really, the way that you demonstrate love, there can be many axes of demonstrating love. Like you said, there's different love languages, right? So although this is a simplified thing of just oscillations in the two-dimensional plane, the reason I call them vibes, I think you can have oscillations not just in the two-dimensional plane, but across many different dimensions, all right? So the love potential can get converted into demonstrated love that's showing up in many different types of axes, many different areas of life. But at the end, there is some kind of conservation of energy going on, as in you can't just keep demonstrating love forever. You need to receive the energy back in order to have a
reciprocity,
sustainable oscillation. Yeah, that's the idea.
And I was saying, this could be a tool that could be used because a lot of times people don't know where their vibe starts, where their energy is starting, where the energy is beginning. And they're trying to figure out, how do I change? And this is a basic way to help them to see there needs to be an introduction of more positive energy and less negative. So I can definitely see how they can do that.
So Tomha, let me blow your mind, right? You said your name is Native American, and Native Americans believe in reincarnation, right? They believe that there's more than just the physical world. Okay, let me blow your mind. Okay. So my hypothesis is that all of reality is comprised of, it can be described by standing wave oscillations. Okay, so I'm going to explain what a standing wave is. But I don't know if have you heard the term standing wave?
No, I have not.
Okay, so let me see I think there's some good examples of standing waves. But a standing wave is basically, it's usually when we think of waves, we think of like a ripple that's moving, like waves are moving somewhere. A standing wave is just something that's moving up and down in place. So if you took like a musical string, all right, and you plucked it, all right, it would just move up and down, wobble up and down. That's called a standing wave. Okay. Now the thing is, on a string, so let's stick to the 1D case, all right? So on a string, all right, you can have a standing wave that's going up and down like this, okay? So it just like oscillates up and down like this. That's called like I think that's called the first harmonic of the standing wave. You can also have something, if the only constraint is that it's fastened at the two ends of the string, you can also have the string wobble like this, all right? So let me show you the harmonic. So this would be like the second harmonic. So the point is that the same, the same string. So let's say the string is like reality. This is a one-dimensional reality, and our reality is three-dimensional. But this string is like a one-dimensional reality, and there's many different ways for the string to oscillate. So many different frequencies for the string to oscillate at. Okay, so let me pull up some standing wave simulator. Standing. Oh. Standing wave simulator. Maybe this is the one. No, that's not the one. I think this one, I liked it. No. Okay, yeah, so this is like the first harmonic of a standing wave. Just focus on the green string, right? It's going up and down. And then if I want to, I can, I think I can just raise up the frequency. So like this is a different standing wave that's at a different frequency, all right? And all of these can happen on the string. Okay, so there's a concept in math called a Fourier series, all right? And the idea for Fourier series, it's very, very interesting. Okay, the idea for Fourier series is that if you give me any kind of function that's just defined on like that has like a start time, end time, and you give me any kind of oscillatory movement, or not even oscillatory movement, just again any kind of movement. Okay, let's say you have your string and you're saying that the movement looks like this. Okay, like it's like up and down and then flat. All right, a Fourier series representation says that this movement can be represented as a combination of sine waves and cosine waves, just at different frequencies. All right, so that's what a Fourier series representation would take this little squiggle that I've drawn and represent it in terms of sine and cosine, sines and cosine waves at different frequencies. So it would basically decompose, any wave into the harmonics, right? The different frequencies. And it's not just different frequencies. Sometimes you need different offsets. That's why it's both sine and cosine waves, because the cosine wave is you take the sine wave and you shift it to cancel certain things out. Yeah. But anything, all right. So now what's very interesting is that in signal processing, again, I know this from my colleagues who did signal processing mostly. I never done it myself. But if you have a signal that has a very sharp transition, right? Let's say you have a signal, it's going down, 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 suddenly it transitions, and then it's like, it looks like this. Okay, this sharp transition, whenever you do a Fourier series decomposition for a sharp transition, for any kind of boundary, it always corresponds to really high frequency components in Fourier series. So, which is to say, if you give me a shape that has a sharp transition and you say, represent the shape for me in terms of interfering, like, because you have constructive and destructive interference, that is, if you add two sine waves together and they're harmonizing, then you get a really big oscillation. But if they're interfering with each other, if they're canceling each other out, then you get a flat line. So the signal processing says that if you have any function that is this really sharp transition and you say, represent that sharp transition in terms of sine waves and cosine waves, you are going to have to use some very, very high frequency sine waves and cosine waves in order to get them to cancel out and produce this sharp transition, right? So like, you know, high frequency means like the sine waves and cosine waves that you're going to have to use to represent this, they're going to look like that. Okay. Now here's something interesting. Everything that the physical reality that we perceive, it's all about boundaries and delineations, okay? So what if the physical reality that we perceive is just the it's made up of the very, very, very high frequency part of all the collective vibrations. But it's not everything, okay? So if you detach from the physical reality, you'll get put in touch with the lower frequency vibrations that are not about hard boundaries and hard distinctions. And I'm telling you, Tomha, that this idea is weirdly consistent with what people say happens when they have near-death experiences, right? So in a near-death experience, you're getting detached from your physical body. And they report some really weird stuff. They report, I was aware of everything. I could see my husband getting off the plane. I could see the nurse, next to me on the table. And the things that they describe, like their physical body is supposedly unconscious, but they're able to describe all these events happening at a global scale. And I think what happened is just that the physical body is there to tune us into the very high frequency components of reality. So the physical body is there to make sure that we only focus on the boundaries and the definitions, because that's what we need to survive. If we're not in touch with physical reality, then by evolution, our physical bodies are going to disintegrate very soon. But as soon as our physical bodies disintegrate, what happens? That just means you take away the high frequency component. You stop paying attention to the high frequency component. And now you're paying attention to all the other low frequency components, which are at a much larger scale, right? They're not about boundaries and delineations. They're about the way that the whole of reality is moving. All right. So I think that's the whole purpose of our physical bodies, is to just, the physical bodies are not what put us in touch with physical reality. The physical bodies are what screen out the rest of reality so we can focus on the high frequency components. And then like reincarnation, there's a plausible mechanism for it. It's just that your high frequency components got destroyed because something happened to your physical body, but the rest of your vibe is still there. Okay. And then if you gather enough energy from other sources, so I think you still have to satisfy conservation of energy. High frequency components, in physics, the higher the frequency of a wave, the more energy it takes. So high frequency components take a lot of energy, like mass, right? Mass is E equals mc squared, says that physical mass is just very, very highly concentrated energy, which tracks with the fact that physical mass might just be the very, very high frequency part of the vibe. All right, which is very high energy. And then if you destroy it, that energy just gets released and it can go into the lower frequency parts of the vibe. Okay, so we never, according to vibe theory, our consciousness does not end when our physical body dies. According to vibe theory, our consciousness is just liberated from focusing on the high frequency components. And like I have the theory that our brains don't even store memories. Our brains, they are just there to tune us into particular parts. Our brains are like messengers communicating with the collective vibe, saying, I want to tune into the vibration associated with this memory. I am adjusted to it. So now when I'm tuning into the vibration associated with this, so imagine like the collective vibe is just this big radio signal that we can tune into different frequencies whenever we want. And our brains, when we remember stuff, we're just tuning into frequencies from the collective vibe. And that is actually like so weirdly consistent with how memories are stored. And there are people who say they can remember literally everything. And when I heard of those people, and I'm like, how can you remember literally everything? Your brain doesn't have room. But it makes sense that the brain is just a radio transmitter that helps us tune into memory.
Connects to the collective, almost like a SoundCloud.
Yeah, and
so now that's generating a lot of thoughts too, because words, language, speaking is vibration.
There's
a lot of things, and if you believe in like the order of life, like our life is a conversation. Our life is a word. Our life is
Tomha,
a vibration. Like
even
just
thoughts.
Like
according to vibe theory, thoughts could also generate lower frequency vibrations. They're not physical, so it won't be a high frequency vibration, but lower frequency vibrations, absolutely. And lower frequency means it's subtle, right? It's not like in your face going up and down. It's just subtle. And Tomha, there is a mechanism for psychic phenomena to be possible. And there's so many reports of psychic phenomena, all right? We keep dismissing them as liars, but there's so many reports. Like that Netflix documentary, Surviving Death, it's like really weird, the number of reports of psychic phenomena. But according to vibe theory, it's totally natural. Psychic phenomena means you just tune in to a lower frequency component of the vibe that normally our physical bodies.
That's so funny because there are some people that even say that there's another word for that called the spiritual realm. Absolutely. Like even people that there are crystals that have certain frequencies and vibrations connected to them.
There's also a lot of potential for fraud. So I'm not going to believe that until I see like a good mechanism.
But I'm just saying, based on the definition of vibration, just if you said that energy can be transferred, energy can be transferred through objects, through a crystal. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
energy can be transferred through us. It can be so. Basically, what I'm saying is, I can understand how there could be a connection with lower frequency and higher frequency
100%.
based
Absolutely.
on some type of
Absolutely.
awareness.
So I think psychic
like
phenomena,
you have to concentrate and focus
absolutely.
on it.
Yeah. So just to clarify, as per vibe theory, I think psychic phenomena are possible. That doesn't mean I believe every person who claims to be a psychic is real. I definitely don't think every person. I think some people who claim to be psychics are absolute frauds.
I know for a fact. I have evidence. I can tell you personally experiences that I've had where there are phenomena that, like you said, are just people just talking. But then there's actual things that are experienced that can't be explained by high frequency occurrences. According to your vibe theory, it's a low frequency occurrence that actually was experienced.
Yeah,
so that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like I can definitely, yeah.
And there's something else I wanted to say, right? Even like a phenomenon like divination, like predicting the future. What if that is just an attempt to query what the values are for the potential energy in reality, right? So it's not just, nothing is set in stone, but you know, right? When you see this oscillating little rod, you know that the shadow that you see on reality isn't the whole thing. So what if divination is just a way to say, okay, I saw the little shadow on reality, but can you tell me a little bit about what the imaginary component is? Like, this person has not been demonstrating love, but what's their love potential like? Like, maybe that's what things like tarot readings are just trying to get at. I mean, I don't know how well they work, maybe, but at the very least, I think tarot readings are a great way to tap into your own subconscious's best understanding of a situation. So your subconscious could be wrong, but your subconscious is probably more right about other people than your conscious mind, which is full of these garbage.
That's what I have to say. Like, your subconscious is more in tune.
There we go.
Based on vibration, the tuning of your subconscious is more connected to the collective than it is your individual.
Collective consciousness, absolutely.
Individualistic is based on that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, there was one more idea that I wanted to put forth, which is, what are forces? Okay, so I think forces are just a way to transform energy from lower frequencies to higher frequencies and vice versa. All right. So if you want to, like, that is in the physics sense, forces are just energy transformations, right? So the idea is that, so there's something very interesting. It's like the potential energy component is actually the part that you use to predict the future. All right, because it tells you what's going to happen. And if you can apply forces to change the potential energy component, that means the future is not set in stone. All right. So if somebody wanted to, they could apply a force to take, let's say this person was about to demonstrate a lot of love because they had a lot of love potential. Somebody could come in, apply a force, deplete all that love potential in an instant, and then the person's not going to demonstrate any love. So you can change the future. And I don't know quantum mechanics, but I saw some articles saying there's no such thing as objective reality. So I have this hypothesis that objective reality is just the real part, all right? It's just the shadow, it's the part that we see. And the imaginary component, the potential energy, that's actually not set in stone. That's actually just a little bit, I think it's a little bit randomly sampled from a probability distribution, actually, what the true potential energy is. And that probability distribution, it depends on what people's beliefs are. In other words, this is just a crazy hypothesis, but if you believe the world is awful, then the potential energy components of reality are more likely to be sampled in a way that confirms that belief. Or at least definitely if you believe that you are awful, if you believe that you have no love potential, you're not going to have any love potential, right?
Well, I would like to add to that, in that if you believe it, you are tuning, you are connecting yourself with that frequency. If you believing something is possible in a positive way, then you'll stay in that vector that's imaginary that could possibly happen in a positive way.
Possibly.
And so you're in the high frequency, you're tuning yourself to absorb or to connect to that frequency, as opposed to if you're thinking negative, like you say, if you believe the world is a negative place, then that's what you're tuning into. That's what you're being connected to.
I think there's something to that as well.
Because there are people that will have a positive experience and define it as negative because they want that, because they believe that.
Right. They will see positive demonstrated. So the way I describe that is they see a positive experience, right? So they see positive demonstrated love. They see love up here, okay? And they are convinced that they will come up with some explanation of the potential energy. So let's say they see love up here, and instead of saying the potential energy is up here, they'll say, oh, but the potential energy must be depleted. The person must be so tired, and now watch, they're going to be mean to you. All right. So that you never know what the potential energy part is. You just see what's real. And you can make up any story for the potential energy. You could be like, the whole thing was passive aggressive. It was all coming from negative potential energy, right? You can always make up a story about what the potential energy behind the action was. And that story that you make up is going to affect how you predict the future, because the potential energy predicts the future. Now, there was one important thing that I wanted to say, which was belief, right? Certainly, if you want to be able to tune into low frequency components, you need to believe in these phenomena, but also I don't think the process of harmonization can be faked. All right. So believing that you're tuning into somebody's frequency does not mean you're actually tuning into the frequency. You actually have to feel that kind of synergy. All right. So you can always tell between I am projecting, that is, I'm making up a bunch of stories about the other person and putting my beliefs on them. And that is not a psychic reading. That is called projection. That is you making up a whole bunch of potential energy components and putting them on the other person.
And that also could be manipulation.
If you convince the person that you are psychic, and then instead of feeding them a bunch of absolutely. But yeah, I think true quote unquote tuning into other people's frequencies, it will feel a little bit like you're out of control. It will feel like a trance state, right? So it feels like, so to me, sometimes when I feel like I'm tuning into something else, it'll feel like the back of my brain is lighting up. When I'm in thinking mode, right now, the front of my brain is lighting up.
The front is on fire right now.
It's all front of my brain. But when I'm tuning into my emotions and like doing like a meditative state, it feels like the back of my brain lights up. Okay, and it's like all those lower frequencies are being used for chatter. And there's also something very interesting, because I think in psychodynamic theory, they say that it takes effort to keep things unconscious. So what is it, like I had this hypothesis for what it means to be keeping things unconscious. So your body probably keeps things away from your conscious mind when it realizes your conscious mind doesn't want to hear them. So the unconscious mind is just, your conscious mind is tuned into very high frequencies, physical world, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point, the unconscious mind is like, she does not want to hear what we have to say. So we are going to communicate on strictly lower frequencies, like emotions and feelings and images. And occasionally we will try to communicate with her by sending her a strong emotion or a strong image that feels like it comes out of nowhere. If she listens to us, great. Otherwise, we're stuck with using these lower frequencies to communicate because she just does not want to hear what we have to say. And that's why emotions feel illogical, because we don't even know the conversation that our subconscious had before it sent us an emotion. All right. But the crazy part is like also our really honed logical thinking capabilities, only our prefrontal cortex can access them, because they are all about sharp boundaries, which means they're all about high frequencies. And if you don't allow your body to communicate with you on the higher frequencies, because maybe as soon as the body says something you don't like, you're like, I hate that, I'm going to like destructively interfere with everything you're telling me and silence you, then your body's never going to use the high frequency components to communicate with you, which means the body can't use your logical thinking capabilities because you won't listen to it. All right. So that's my theory of what it means to have a subconscious mind. It means that there's a part of you that's just using a totally different set of communication frequencies. And that's why emotional processing is important, because even if your conscious mind does not know what to do with the emotion, when you tune into certain emotions, you're allowing your subconscious to have chatter on those communication channels. And your subconscious needs to talk to itself to figure out how it feels about something and adjust something, right? So unless you process, when you have an emotion, that is your subconscious saying, I need to talk. I need to talk either with myself, but I need to use this communication channel. Stop doing what you're doing on the high frequency channels, tune into the low frequency channels. Let me have a conversation on the low frequency channels. Just let me feel the feelings. And then the feelings will go away once I've said what I have to say. Yeah.
Okay, what if I threw this caveat out to it, that maybe there's a constant subconscious, unconscious conversation going on and conscious at the same time.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that the brain does is differentiate which one is more pressing and which one is needed at a certain time.
Well, I don't know. Well, so the brain has both conscious and unconscious parts, right? So the conscious, I think they can sometimes just be in competition with each other. It's like two different people sharing a body, and they're having different conversations on different channels, and then they have to just negotiate with each other because they share the same body.
Okay. let me add this there. What if, I don't want to say add, but I'm considering that there's a way to learn how to tap into the subconscious even more.
100%.
There's a way,
yeah,
because there are, I don't know if you listen to bass music or if you do. Well, yes you do, because it's like meditative music. Like there's certain frequencies that create a sensation of peace.
100%.
Like I don't know if you've ever used the word "old," like the old that
absolutely.
That sound.
It's a low frequency.
It creates that low frequency, and
it does.
You feel it creates a sensation of calm.
It does.
It creates a sensation of peace because of that low frequency. And so there must be some type of relationship with low frequency and calm.
100.
Low frequency.
Well,
because that's how you define it.
Well, the way I'd say it is actually it's simpler than that. It's when we put on bass music, or we put on something like we do meditation, we're tuning into the lower frequencies, which means that the higher frequencies are getting silenced. And of course, it's going to feel like calm. The higher frequencies are so high energy, man. They look like this, right? This horrible thing, right? You don't want this in your conscious. This is horrible to listen to. So when you meditate, it's like
you know what that is?
Huh?
That is stress. That is anxiety. That is depression. That's all of those. Yeah.
Well, depression is like the absence of energy to me, but yes, it's definitely anxiety.
But it's both, because see, that's a whole other theory. Oh, excuse me. That's another area that I would love to see how that works, because there are some people who are very, very tense to the point where it creates a numbness.
There's no activity because different parts of themselves are fighting each other. So you have like a part that's generating a high frequency, and then you have something else that's generating exactly the counter frequency. So that's doing exactly the opposite, right? It's going like this, and then when you add them together, you just get a flat baseline because everything's canceling out. Absolutely. That's why I used to be in so much physical pain, because some of my muscles that they'd been wanting to curl up in a fetal position and cry since high school. And then the rest of my muscles were fighting them. So I was just destructively interfering with myself the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah. And then when I released that back pain, that's when I had a bunch of revelations. But yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Your frequency and your vibration
I just released,
you have more harmony.
I released myself from a lot of unproductive. I was putting so much energy. It takes so much energy to generate a wave that is this high frequency and exactly cancels out something else that you've been generating. So I just wasted so much energy fighting with myself. No wonder I was in constant pain and suicidal. So you just release that destructive interference. And now my mind is so much quieter.
Is it? Your mind is so free though. It's like, I would have loved to have met you prior to that experience, because it seems like your mind goes a million miles an hour.
It's free, but it's also quiet in that in between thoughts, there's no unnecessary chatter. Like I see
what you're saying. Like there's no fighting.
Yeah, there's no fighting. There's no like static. There's no static in the radio signal. So I can just tune into what I want. Now, in fairness, I actually did have a pretty tumultuous week. Some horrible stuff happened. Title IX, PTSD, all that. I haven't
which we are supposed to talk about.
We are supposed to talk about, but I clearly don't want to talk
about it. But not now.
Some of this vibe theory is just avoidance, but we can talk about it.
Yeah,
no, it's fine. Physically, I'm fine.
It might be good for us to end this.
Yeah, maybe, and then talk about it. All right, let's talk about my actual shit. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, this was great. All right, I love it. All right, I'm just gonna end this and upload it.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, love this. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure.
Okay.